2023 has been a year of political and economic stalemate in the UK, and the course for change is likely to be laid in the coming year. At the beginning of 2023, the mood in Great Britain was extremely bad, and the political chaos since the EU referendum in 2016 continued to overshadow the country. A few weeks before the turn of the year, the country had its fourth Conservative Prime Minister in 4 years, the ex-banker Rishi Sunak. The consequence of Brexit became more and more noticeable. British travellers who had to wait in long lines at European airports for their passports to be stamped were just as unamused as British companies who had to fill out customs paperwork if they wanted to sell their goods to mainland Europe. The financial markets were further agitated at the beginning of 2023 due to the chaos of the previous autumn. At that time, short-term Prime Minister Liz Truss and her Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng almost triggered another financial crisis with their ideologically over-the-top budget plan. Energy prices were at record levels in the country, which is particularly reliant on gas, and inflation climbed to over 10%. There was a mood of crisis. Measured against this, the country got through 2023 better than many observers would have expected. Inflation recently fell to below 4%, energy prices fell, and the mood within the British economy stabilized accordingly. From this perspective, the fact that the country's economy grew by 0.5% in 2023 was a success until the third quarter. Rishi Sunak also contributed to this stabilization. When he took over as Prime Minister in October 22, he promised to bring much-needed integrity and accountability back to the highest government office after the chaotic terms in office of his predecessors Johnson and Truss. And the demonstrative calm initially paid off. The previous chaos was quickly forgotten. But over the course of the year, it became more and more apparent that Sunak is at heart an arch-conservative politician who apparently dislikes change just as much as quick fixes. Forward-looking decisions were replaced by standstill and regression. Sunak became increasingly distant from the country's climate goals. He slammed a high-speed rail project and garnished a post on social media with a photo showing him in a private jet. Well, political sensitivity works differently. At the Tory party conference in October, Sunak made a somewhat plausible attempt to present himself as a candidate for change who had little in common with his predecessors. A short time later, he appointed David Cameron, the Conservative Prime Minister from 2010 to 2016, to the post of Foreign Secretary. And more right-wing populism took the place of forward-looking ideas. In recent weeks, Sunak has become bogged down in Boris Johnson's era plans to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda before their cases are completed. It's no surprise then that the Tories, who have lost a lot of support since the chaos surrounding Prime Minister Boris Johnson's scandal, are still miles behind the opposition Labour Party. Sunak's personal poll numbers continue to plummet over the course of the year. 51% of the voters surveyed recently had a negative image of him, while only 22% rated him positively. And this negative trend is likely to overshadow politics in Great Britain in the next 12 months, because 2024 is likely to be an election year. According to the rules, national parliamentary elections must be held no later than January 2025. And Sunak, who as Prime Minister sets the election date, recently indicated that he did not want to wait until the last moment. Since then, political observers have been speculating about the possible date, and a date in May currently seems particularly likely to many observers. Local elections will then be held in many parts of the country. A likely defeat for the Tories would further dent the party's prospects in a general election, so it's quite possible that the election campaign will begin in just a few weeks. In 2024, attention will also turn to a politician from the right-wing fringe who has recently become quiet, Nigel Farage. The Eurosceptic and former leader of the right-wing UKIP party largely disappeared from the political scene after the Leave side's narrow victory in the 2016 EU referendum. Recently, Farage has clearly been working on a comeback. The right-wing populist, who had gained access as a reporter for a right-wing television station, was already the secret star at the Tories' party conference in October. Many delegates from the party, which itself has moved sharply to the right in the wake of Brexit and all its turmoils there, appear to welcome Farage's presence. And former Home Secretary Priti Patel managed to hide any fears of contact as well. Farage most recently went to the Australian bush as a participant in the trash TV show I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Outta Here. There he announced a possible return to politics. As members of the Conservative Party, we will not know, and as expected, this caused a lot of hype in the London rumour mill. And since then, Farage, who has previously been with the Tories, has made it known that he will not join the party as long as Rishi Sunak is Prime Minister. Rishi is a lame duck and the Conservative Party is heading for total defeat, he told a newspaper. However, some right-wing newspapers in the country have since speculated that a dream team consisting of Nigel Farage and, yes, Boris Johnson could lead the Tories back into government from the ashes after their expected defeat in the coming election. Rumours about this are likely to arise again and again in 2024. Leadership questions are likely to affect a completely different person in 2024 as well, and that's King Charles III, and more specifically, the question of how many countries he will remain head of state in. Charles is currently head of state in 15 countries around the world, including Australia, the Bahamas, and Grenada. And that could change. Many former colonies have so far held on to the status of a constitutional monarchy under the British Crown, primarily out of their loyalty to Queen Elizabeth II. However, at the end of 2021, Barbados already decided to become a republic with an indirectly elected president, and more could follow. Jamaica wants to hold a referendum on its future status in 2024. And in Australia, where there has long been a strong Republican movement, nationwide consultations are to begin. And the Caribbean state of Antigua and Barbuda would like to hold a referendum within the next 2 years to clarify whether it would like to keep Charles as head of state. And these changes are unlikely to have a noticeable impact on everyday life in Great Britain. They are still symbolically significant. Ultimately, this means that the sphere of influence over the former world power is increasingly shrinking. And despite the rough start, the mood within the economy was cautiously positive last year. However, given the deadlock under the Tories, many business representatives are no longer waiting for the general conditions to improve within the current government. Instead, they have been increasingly moving towards the opposition Labour Party and its leader Keir Starmer for months. They are welcomed there with open arms. Leading Labour politicians and Starmer himself hold regular meetings and consultations with business representatives. Hundreds of them gathered at the Labour Party conference in October. And when asked which party they favoured, 45% of the business representatives surveyed in a recent survey answered Labour. Only 32% preferred the Tories. What may have made Labour leader Keir Starmer particularly popular with many business bosses is his promise that if he wins the election, he would seek to bring the country closer to the EU. Starmer is currently ruling out joining the internal market or the customs union again. However, Labour insiders are rumbling that a Labour government itself could be willing to do so after a few years in office. A Labour government would have the support of the majority of the population, who have not thought much about Brexit for quite some time now. And if you want to see something else, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.